What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Eternity, the new fantasy romantic comedy film from A24, starring Elizabeth Olsen, Miles Teller, and Callum Turner. Eternity was directed by David Frayne from a Blacklist script from Pat Cunane and premiered back in Toronto earlier this year, coming out in a few weeks from A24. I was lucky enough to see it early. There are a lot of early screenings for Eternity, and that's because A24 has a lot of confidence in how good this movie is. I loved A24's Eternity. I think it's a very creative spin on the love triangle romantic comedy film. It's also incredibly high concept. What happens if when you die, you go to a temporary purgatory place in a hotel of sorts? You get to decide which type of eternity you will spend forever remaining in. But when Elizabeth Olsen's Joan passes away right after her husband, Larry, played by Miles Teller, she has the choice of spending the rest of eternity with her husband, or maybe choosing her first husband who died in the war, played by Callum Turner. Great premise. It has excellent and consistent humor throughout its runtime. Really strong romantic sensibilities. Definitely a fair bit of difficult subject matter. Really compelling production design, a realization of its central concept. I think the film is a real blast. I think it's really sweet and touching, really funny. I loved all three of those lead performances. But Divine Joy Randolph, as someone who works in this purgatory, also is tremendous. Ultimately, I think it's really crowd-pleasing. I really can't say enough about how this concept actually never ended up being done before, this kind of like holding ground way station type purgatory for lost souls, and the idea of returning to the physical appearance of when you were most happy. Thus, they revert to their younger selves, and played by Elizabeth Olsen, Callum Turner, and Miles Teller, right? The production design of this station, where it's like this kind of hotel, and on like the conference floor, you have all these different advertisements and booths for the various eternities you can join up, and it's very like 50s aesthetic, and I think in a really cool, like, you know, Mad Men style way, where you can join capitalist world, you can go to mall world, beach world. There's even, I think, pretty amusing nods at stuff that's retired or full, like the world without a man, stuff that they don't do anymore, like the old racist eternities that they no longer send any people to. A lot of great stuff throughout all of the premise. I think the introduction of our first character we meet there, where Larry, Miles Teller's character, dies after choking on a pretzel, which is I think a really funny continuing joke throughout the runtime. But Larry kind of being like an everyman type character and learning the rules of the location of this purgatory for us with his AC, his afterlife consultant, played by Divine Joy Randolph. And I think that all works really good. And just as he's prepared to go off to Beach World for eternity, his wife Joan, we learn, passes away. And we had learned that she was sick in the very beginning of the movie, so it's not completely out of nowhere. And Joan is realized as Elizabeth Olsen, who quickly has a big decision to make, because her previous husband, who died in the Korean War, another continuing joke that's really funny, was played by Callum Turner. And Callum Turner, rather than pick an eternity, has decided to work at this purgatory as a bartender, waiting 60 some odd years since his death for Joan to show up once her life was over. I think there's a lot of early like swoon type moments with Turner. A lot's made of the fact that he's a very conventionally handsome man compared to Miles Teller, who's not an ugly man by any means, but when you can put them next to each other, it's a pretty stark like physical difference. There's a lot of that kind of physical humor played in the beginning. Olsen, I think, is able to do a pretty good job with trying to command this really challenging emotional state where choosing between your past life, where you lived 60 some odd years lovingly with your second husband, or nodding to the life you didn't get to live with your original husband who died as a war hero. And I think there's a lot of things the movie does to shift your allegiance, shift what you're rooting for up and down, as we learn more about these characters and decisions they want to make and where they're leaning. I think the movie does a good job with that. There's some fun fake outs too. I think my only note really about where the movie goes is that I thought it actually had a handful of endings that it could have picked before the ending it ends up settling on, right? It was no surprising that, again, spoilers for the end of the movie here, which again I liked quite a bit. I would enthusiastically recommend. Spoilers for the end. Gets to a point where Joan decides she's going to pick nobody. She's going to pick neither one of them. And I was expecting that turn to happen, but then we advance further with Larry deciding that he'll kind of step up and fall on his sword and encourage her to go with Luke, go with Callum Turner instead, and live that life he didn't get to have. I had a really good time, and he just comes across as so sweet and loving. Where if you'll be happier with him, then I'll be happy because I'm happy if you're happy. Like, I think it's really sweet, and like the loving like romance stuff I think really lands. And I thought the movie would then end there. Again, there was another ending point, but then we keep going. We go to the eternity with Luke and Joan. Things don't go quite as well as they were all hoping. And Joan decides to go back and reverse it and meet back up with Larry. And that's what she really wanted. And, they kind of yada how all that happens. There's a reference at the beginning about how you're not allowed to leave an eternity once you go. They'll put you in the void, which is just darkness, just blackness. We don't go to the void. Did they maybe cop out by not sending anyone to the void in the movie? Perhaps. But it ends in a really sweet but perhaps a neat manner where Larry had decided to become the new bartender, and not commit to an eternity. And then Joan goes and finds him in the bar, and then they go off to Beach World. And I was like, it's really sweet. It's really nice, right? I think the arc of all three characters all lands well. Maybe some people would have wanted it to stop at one of those earlier stations. Not sure. Another really good concept, really good production design, extrapolation of an idea that we see a few times in the movie is the concept of the archives tunnel, where when you're at an eternity, you can go visit the archives tunnel and see memories of your past life. But the way it's approximated is it's almost like this kind of diorama style, again, kind of shouting out like, mid 20th century aesthetics and stuff, where you watch the actors, Turner, Teller, Olsen, whoever it is in the scene, kind of acting on a very flat stage. And it works well with how when we're in the purgatory place, we don't see outside windows. It's always a painted backdrop, like it's a theater play or something. I think aesthetically all that works. There's definitely some darker stuff and funny stuff that you see in the archives tunnel. So yeah, maybe like the last piece is a bit neat. But man, I really liked it. I thought all the performances were awesome. I think Turner does a lot throughout the course of the movie to come across as not just man candy, as not just this forlorn lover, some jealous guy who's jealous of someone else for getting to live the life that was taken away from him. He doesn't good enough job to fill that out. I think Teller really good as Larry, who's maybe a simpler guy, but also really sweet and genuine. And his shortcomings come up often in the film. Again, I really like the way he plays it. And Olsen probably has the hardest and thankless job of the three because she has to kind of play the middle the whole time. But I think she also does that quite well. Along those lines, I mentioned Divine Joy Randolph, her contemporary, the other Afterlife coordinator. Luke's, in this case, is played by John Early. He's also really funny. I saw it in the early screening, so it was a really packed house. Big laugh out loud moments throughout, but also the tearjerker stuff. Like, I heard the sniffling. Like, people were invested in the story. When Joan decides to pick no one, you saw people like throw up their arms and lurch forward and stuff. Like, people are invested. I think this movie is going to really land with people and could actually end up being a pretty solid hit. I don't know if the star power in the movie is quite big enough to lend itself to being like something massive, without some kind of viral push or something. But I think A24 can definitely really sell this movie, and that's why they've been putting it in front of so many people with various early access screenings, just because they want that positive word of mouth to get going. Teller, frankly, it's one of his most endearing roles in quite some time. Elizabeth Olsen continues to make great choices. She's done a lot of great stuff post her Marvel run. And Callum Turner, I think this is his most notable film role, honestly. Apologies to The Boys in the Boat, apologies to For All Mankind on Apple, but like, this is a great, turn from him. And I think he showed a lot in it, and shout out him, by the way, having a great year, engaged to Dua Lipa. What a lucky guy. But I think he did a nice job. And then David Frayne, he's someone with a TV background. I believe this is his first feature film. Very impressive. I think it's A24 is gonna bring this movie home, and I think it's gonna really resonate. Because it has a high concept thing that can bring people in. But then when you actually watch it, it has the humor, it has the romance, it has the emotional weight. So to me, it was really knocked it out. of the park. Really, really happy with the movie. Let me know, though, when you've seen it. What did you think of A24's Eternity? What did you like most about the movie? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.